Welcome back to Day 2 of the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. Enjoy your session, and remember, complete the survey for each session that you attend. These surveys will be sent to you via email at the end of each session.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Using Childcare Data to Inform Policy and Practice session. And welcome to the 2021 TWC Virtual Workforce Forum. It's good to see you all virtually. My name is Pamela Brockhausen, and I, along with Anita Smith, will serve as your moderators. Together, we'll be in the background monitoring the Q&A and handling any issues that might arise. Please note that you're not alone in the session. You're part of a larger audience, but you're in a listen-only mode for the duration of today's session. As a reminder, this session is being recorded. We encourage you to submit written questions at any time during the presentation. They do want to hear your questions as we go. You'll use the Q&A panel. It's located at the bottom right of your device screen, so go ahead and click on that. And that's where you will type your questions into the text field. But be sure to click the drop down and choose all panelists before you click send. And if you're really enjoying the session, you can also open the participants section and give us feedback using the tiny megaphone. For your convenience, if you want closed captions, you can click on Multimedia Viewer. You're going to get an external site message. Just click OK, and that way you can see the closed captions. If we do not get time for all of your questions, the presenters might review your comments after the session, and their contact information will be displayed at the end of the session for you to follow up. If you experience any technical difficulties at any time during this WebEx event, please submit them in the Q&A panel and we will try to assist you. And also a reminder to complete the survey when you exit the session. As soon as you leave, the survey will pop up in your browser. So with that, we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's presentation. I am pleased to introduce Allison Wilson, the Manager of Program Policy and Quality Initiatives, and Shay Everitt, Senior Advisor for Childcare and Pre-K Partnerships, and they're both with Texas Workforce Commission. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here today. I know you can't see the participants, but we have about 90 people, a lot of familiar faces or names, I suppose, but definitely some new folks as well. So this is a new presentation. We have not given it before. So hopefully you will get some new information. And I'm going to try to be on video, but if there is an error or it is taking or it's not working because the connectivity is a little iffy today, I'll turn it off. So to get started, this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about some new data that's available to local workforce boards. Some of it's new, some of it's existing. You may be familiar with some of it, others may be new to you. We'll talk a little bit about how you can use this data. We're going to dive into a process called systems thinking as well. And then we're going to have, formal time for formal Q&A at the end. But feel free to ask questions throughout, and we will take them as we go. So, getting into the new data that's available, some of you have heard Allison talk about txr3.org over the last couple of years. It's been in the works since about 2018. There has been a little stop and go with it, out of our control, of course, but we are moving right along. This is a partnership with the Texas Education Agency, and this website is up, but the search tool that has all this great wealth of information It will be available at this website, txr3.org, in the next 3 to 6 months. We hope it's closer to 3, and we will be sure to let all the workforce boards know as soon as we have it and give y'all a tutorial on how to use it. But in the meantime, we just want to let you know what information to expect on it. There's basically 3 goals that this website has. It's to help you understand your communities, schools, and students with the goal of having ready communities, ready schools, and ready students. This was an initiative that included a lot of government and non-government stakeholders. Some of you may have even been part of the brainstorming around it, but it is a tool to help you and other community leaders make decisions and understand what's going on in the context of early childhood education, which of course includes childcare. There's so much you can do with this information. Texas Rising Star providers might use this tool to identify other Texas Rising Star providers or school districts to partner with. Local workforce boards may use this tool to identify local professional development needs and partners to leverage professional development resources across your region. Also, education service centers, which are your counterparts over with the school districts, they may use this website to visualize their school readiness needs and to reach out and work with you, because after all, this is a whole community of early childhood programs, including childcare and school districts. So I'm going to dive into this a little bit more, and Allison will jump in if there's anything I've missed. Ready communities, this is a snapshot of what you might see. This section seeks to inform program decision makers on factors related to the question, who are the early childhood educators in my area? It covers public school pre-K and Texas Rising Star providers, as well as others. And there's also a map function.
So I was just going to jump in, Shay, and kind of add from a very high level. A good way to think about this tool, this analytical tool, is it really kind of turns the idea of school readiness on its head. Usually when we talk about school readiness, we're very focused on the skill level and the development of the children who are about to go to school. This tool really helps you to look at the programs and the educators that are working with those children to determine, are they ready to prepare these kids? And so you'll see there's a big focus on the professional development that these educators are accessing. And it helps you to overlay that information with some of the student data to see whether or not those professional development investments are really doing what they should do and where you may have gaps.
Thanks, Allison. That's super helpful. So here you can see some of this professional development information. You can see it over a trend of 3 years. In most of these sections, or in most of these categories, the trend is upward, which is great. But this can help you understand what's going on in your area and what trainings teachers are or aren't getting. Then this one is ready students. What we're looking at here is the beginning of the year kindergarten proficiency. You can also see this is mostly an upward trajectories, always good. And you can see the school's trends, and you can look at it specific to your region as well as statewide. You can think about it as, how are our Texas Rising Star programs supporting to improve these scores? Many times children are in a childcare setting through their pre-K year and then transition to kindergarten. Sometimes they're in the childcare setting before pre-K, but either way, that childcare setting is critical to setting that child up for success. Another data initiative that you've likely heard of is, all of you have heard of because this has been implemented already. It's very exciting. Texas is one of the first states to actually do this. Children who are in the child care subsidy program now have a student ID in the public school system over at the Texas Education Agency. So that means children birth to 5 who didn't have one and who are part of subsidy now have one. And that is the extent of what is happening so far. Merely that ID has been assigned and shared. What comes next is very exciting, and it's in development, and it will take time. But it's how can we use this data? What does it mean? How does it inform our programs and program resources? So that's something to anticipate in the coming years, that particularly a cross-agency, interagency work group is working on. Also, many of you have probably heard of childcare by the numbers. This is something that's been a long time coming. I think we're actually past this version 1.0 coming soon. We might be almost at version 3.0 coming soon. We've done some really great work on this platform, and you can basically look at a statewide trends or your local workforce development trends over time related to these data points you can see on the screen. So it would, it's very helpful to see, okay, how am I doing, or how are we doing in our local workforce board? I know that we're similar in terms of population, size, geography to another workforce board or two. How are they doing? Learning from each other and helping each other. So this just adds a bit of more transparency to what was formerly available publicly. Something else that many of you have also probably heard of is our Texas Child Care Availability Portal. We have almost 30% of all open child care providers participating in this. Earlier in the summer, last summer, we were at about 50% at the height of, the beginning actually of the pandemic. This was a part of an initiative that was part of the Governor's Frontline Child Care Task Force, and TWC since is going to continue with this initiative and supporting it and making sure that this data is available and working with you all to get child care programs to provide their information on how many seats they have available by age. We have spent the last 6 or so months talking to child care providers, getting their feedback on the process, and improving that process. So we are preparing to give you all some information in the coming weeks about some improvements being made, as well as a desk aid on how to support your child care programs and reporting their available seats. So stay tuned for that. But there is, what this screen is showing is that you can go to the Child Care Availability Portal website. You can click this little I at the top and click on Export Data, and you can see the whole state, every child care provider, their availability by age group, if they're reporting it or if they're not, so that you can see, okay, who's reporting in my area and who is not, and who's subsidy or who's TRS and who's not. So that's just one way for you to grab that data and have it available to meet your needs. Also related to this availability portal, we have a dashboard very specific for local workforce boards. It's got a little filter on the right of it where you can select your local workforce board. We made some improvements to this as well, and we'll continue to do so based on feedback that we get from you all about what you want to see and what's helpful and what's not. You can see how many slots are available by age group. You can see parent searches in your area. We also have a little widget where you can download a spreadsheet of all child care providers, and it sorts them, or you can filter for them by days they're open and their hours of operation. So if you want to see everyone open after 9 p.m., you can do that, or everyone open on Saturdays and Sundays. We've used that a lot in conjunction with some of y'all over the last, or during this pandemic, as we have seen folks trying to get back to work and parents really needing to understand that non-traditional hours of care. So that's something that's available in there. And feel free to reach out to me anytime if you have questions about this or any of this data. We're here to support you. Here are just some links to some of these data resources as well as some others. that are available to you to help you understand what's going on in childcare in your area. This top one is where you can see some monthly reports as well as the childcare by the numbers. Also, if you want to see the breakdown of the most recent or historical market rate surveys. Finally, we also have a Texas Rising Star program finder if you want to just be able to visualize that in a map form or point your parents to that as well. We know not every board has a mapping function, but this is something that you can also see through the Texas Child Care Availability Portal. And then also, we will be providing each local workforce board soon with some child care desert data specific to your area. That's particularly related to a contracted slots initiative, which I won't go into the details of. Local workforce boards have been briefed on that, but that is going to be coming soon. Some other early childhood data you might be interested in, particularly related to what's happening between childcare and pre-K or childcare pre-K partnerships. We've recently taken a look at all the children enrolled in subsidy who are also eligible for public school pre-K, either based on income or based on their home language. We have this list available and can share with each local board contact. We've shared it with some of you and worked with some of you already on this. We also have early Head Start and Head Start enrollment, and we're working with the Texas Education Agency to try to understand child care providers that are in different types of pre-K partnerships. That's not something currently collected, but we will be hopefully having that data within the next year. The Texas Education Agency, of course, has a ton of information that's available publicly, including your local school districts and charter schools and pre-K and how many children are already enrolled in public school pre-K. You may wonder why this is helpful to you. Well, we've heard in different areas this is an issue. In some areas it's not yet. But in what we have heard from some local boards and child care providers is that they're concerned because their enrolled number of 4-year-olds is going down as children are enrolled in public school, as the public school 4-year-old pre-K program has been expanded to a full day. And we also know that between 70 and 80% of all eligible 4-year-olds are in fact enrolled in public pre-K at a public school setting. We also know that about 10 or 12% of eligible 3-year-olds are enrolled in public school pre-K. So that means most of the 3-year-olds are not in public school pre-K, but they are at childcare or they are at home. And so it helps you understand what's going on in your community, truly what's happening and where the children are. We also have information about school districts with waivers and waivers who are not quite ready yet to expand their pre-K program to full day. So we can help you understand that in your area. And if you have been part of our pre-K partnership conversations that are happening, that some of them happened last week, we're going to have a summit May 6th to 7th as well. You have gotten a lot of data on this, and we've packaged this data for each local workforce board. It has been shared with you. If you have not gotten this data or you're interested in it, you can email me as well. But these are all some school readiness indicators that can help you understand what's truly going on in your area. And that was just a reiteration of the previous slide. But here are some of the resources from TEA. You should all have access to this PowerPoint. Our email addresses are on the first slide, and then we have some of these links throughout to help you. These are the public resources from the Texas Education Agency that you might be interested in. All right, so that is the end of information or presentation about data. We're going to talk a little bit about how to use this data in terms of policy making, because that is something so important that each of you do locally. So systems thinking. This may be a new concept for you. It might be something you're familiar with, But it is really helpful when you have either some really big goals you're trying to tackle, or you have some big problems that you're trying to solve. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about next. I'm sure everyone has seen this by now, the picture of this iceberg that is meant to kind of help us understand or see what we usually see, what's obvious and right in front of us when it comes to any sort of policy issue or problem or goal, and what we usually miss. But let's dive a little deeper into this. Sometimes what we usually see are things that have happened or keep happening, but below the surface, what we usually miss or need to use systems thinking to kind of dive into a little bit more are patterns of behavior. What's been happening? What are the trends? What changes have occurred to get us where we are? Structures of the system. What has influenced these patterns? New policies, laws, etc. What are the relationships among different parts? And we'll talk a little bit about different parts of ecosystems in a moment. And then mental models. What are the assumptions or beliefs or values do people hold about our system? And when we're talking about a system here, we are talking about the early childhood system, the child care subsidy system. There are so many different systems in which we operate every day, in which you are in charge of influencing, or at least a component of influencing every day. And in order to create meaningful, lasting change in your community, we need to move beyond the tip of the iceberg into a deeper understanding of the current context. So we're going to talk about how to do this today. So systems thinking, the ability to understand a set of interconnected elements and their connections in order to achieve a desired purpose. So basically, systems thinking is a way of helping a person to view systems from a broad perspective. That includes seeing overall structures, patterns, and cycles in a system, rather than seeing only specific events in the system. I know it's easy for me to get caught up in the minutia of specific events, of specific problems, of specific things that are happening. And it takes a lot of work sometimes to put them in the context of what may be happening more broadly. If we have big goals like getting more providers into Texas Rising Star, or getting more providers in the subsidy system, or helping people move up in Texas Rising Star, then we need to think big about the whole system. And we'll give some examples of this in a little bit. So this is something that you might have seen before. It's an ecological systems theory. You can see the different levels of systems. It consists of different people, parts, or components. These systems, it's showing their dynamic. You can see these arrows. Sometimes each system is working just together within itself or across systems. They're influenced by each other. Each system has specific or explicit or implicit goals or purposes, but it's important to understand that every part of the system is interconnected. Sometimes you might see yourself as part of one system, even though you are influenced and part of a lot of systems. So you have the individual who's in the middle. Then you have microsystems that are working around that individual and with that individual, such as a family or a community or church, schools. Then you have mesosystems that work in the middle between them and the exosystem of mass media and industries and what's happening, who are your neighbors, whether you know them or not, and macrosystems, attitude, ideologies of the culture. Something that can kind of go a little deeper that's not even on here is time. What's happening? How long are things taking? How long has something been happening as well? So these are just some specific examples when it comes to an ecosystem for child care providers. So the individual, for example, could be the child care center director. His or her microsystem are the children they serve, the parents they serve, their peers in other childcare programs, the teachers and staff they employ. Mesosystem would be the licensing staff that comes in, or Texas Rising Star mentors, assessors that you all work with. Exosystem here would be Texas Rising Star guidelines, subsidy program guidelines, resources, employers in their community who need to make sure that their employees have childcare for children, and other early childhood programs such as public school pre-K or Head Start. Then you have this macro system of attitudes and ideologies of the culture of childcare providers. Are we worried about school readiness? Is there too many regulations? We have high turnover in our teachers. We're not making enough money. These things that we hear all the time that deeply influence what's happening for childcare providers day in and day out. So the purpose of showing you this is just to help bring us out of our day-to-day and things that are going on and big problems we see right in our face every day, to help us see how we are part of a bigger system. And that's the start of systems thinking. We have lots of elements of an early childhood system that I've listed here. I won't go through each, but we know that they work interconnectedly. Some influence others, some have an impact on something that also has, an impact on something else in this list. Some of these are implicit, some of them are explicit. So now we're going to go into some examples of conventional thinking versus systems thinking to help us understand, how is this different from what we may do every day, or what my peers do, or what our bosses do, or anyone else. So, conventional thinking, here's an example. The connections between problems and their causes are obvious and easy to trace. This is something easily that we can fall into every day because of experience we have, or other things related to our day-to-day jobs. But systems thinking is pausing and saying, maybe the relationship between problems and their causes is indirect and not obvious. And let's go down that path and explore. So one example of this is maybe you have a set of child care providers that you've been trying to work with for a really long time to become Texas Rising Star, and they are just not interested. Are they too busy? Do they potentially not quite understand how much it's costing their business by missing out on that TRS funding? Is there some sort of local or state policy that needs to shift because it's a big barrier? Do we even have the data to understand the causes of problems? Have we been asking providers the right questions about what they need and what they're not getting, and how we can help get them to a place of interest? So it's just starting to ask some other questions and think about things a little bit differently. Another example is that others, either within or outside our organization, are to blame for our problems, and they must be the ones to change. Systems thinking is saying, we're part of the problem, we have influence over it, and we need to change our own behavior. This is hard to start these conversations, but one key indicator is when you hear they used a lot. They are to blame. They won't do this or that. So how can we get to flipping this around and thinking about it in a systems thinking way? Sometimes establishing feedback loops, for example, can help us understand our own blind spots. I know at the state level, we are talking more and more to parents and providers and local workforce boards about what it is that you need and that you need from us. Do you have a way for child care providers to give you feedback regularly and strategically on how you're managing the subsidy program or Texas Rising Star? What about parent feedback? Do you have an easy and strategic way to solicit parent feedback on their experiences with the subsidy program or with your contractor or whoever it may be? Those are just some examples of how to start, just pushing the boundaries a little bit to see how we can get to other parts of the system to influence the work that we are doing. Another one, a policy designed to achieve short-term success will also assure long-term success, versus systems thinking, where quick fixes don't always work. They may make no difference, or they may make matters worse. Sometimes quick fixes work, sometimes they don't. So this is just one thing to consider. For example, maybe here's a real life example. We heard from child care providers recently when some of the focus groups we were doing that their workforce board does a lot to really support them and it's helpful, but they also bought some smart boards and other technology or supplies that aren't really being used. That's not really what providers needed. Sometimes those decisions are made and child care providers maybe don't understand why they need these, or there's just a gap in communication. So one way to think about this is, what do you want to achieve long-term? Long-term, do you want all your Texas Rising, all your subsidy providers to be on a path toward Texas Rising Star? Or do you want to get to like at least 50% of your child care programs in Texas Rising Star? I know many of you have set ambitious goals over the last couple of years. I know COVID threw a wrench in a lot of things and probably helped you establish some new goals and new initiatives. But what do you want to achieve long-term? Starting from there and working backwards, collaborating with providers, reaching out to those you don't normally hear from. I know when we reach out to providers and try to get input, we hear from the same ones every time, almost every time. So it's important for us too to try to get those who aren't always voicing their opinions so that we get a more diverse audience as well. If you have any questions, just a reminder, chat and Q&A is open. Here's another example. In order to optimize the whole, we must optimize the parts. That is very conventional, especially with, our government programs. But in order to optimize the whole in systems thinking, we must improve the relationships among the parts. One example of this is all of the quality investments that we make at state and local levels. What do your providers think about the trainings you offer? In one recent focus group, we heard about providers really loving what the workforce board is providing them in terms of support, but in terms of some professional development, they're getting the same trainer over and over every year, but they don't really like the trainer and they're not really getting much out of the trainings. They wanted something new and fresh. Does that local board just hire a new trainer, or do you open up dialogue? Does that local workforce board know that the child care providers are unhappy? Or do they not know? Do they solicit feedback? Probably. Is it anonymous? I don't know. Sometimes it's helpful to get anonymous feedback for people to be more honest, because we know, especially in local communities, everyone knows everyone else and doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Do they include child care providers in planning the trainings to be offered for the upcoming year? How can we get those voices to understand how everything's working across the spectrum so that there's improvement in the relationship among the different initiatives and the different investments that are being made and among the different parts of the system? Okay, so this one, another fun one. Sometimes we aggressively tackle many independent initiatives at the same time. Where in systems thinking, sometimes it's more helpful to say, okay, what are a few things that we want to focus on sustained over time to produce a larger impact? It's about potentially spreading ourselves and our resources too thin versus having a few very intentional initiatives that we really want to push for. So maybe you offer a ton of great quality supports like stipends, scholarships, professional development, technology grants, playground equipment, things like that. But what are you trying to achieve as a whole? Are you trying to get more providers into Texas Rising Star? Are you trying to get more providers to be Texas Rising Star 4-star? Whatever your one goal is, what are the handful of things that you can do to really make a meaningful improvement to step them up through that ladder? And the great news is that you have access to a lot of data on this in terms of their assessments, where they're doing well with Texas Rising Star and where they're struggling. And some of what I've talked about, maybe not, like I said, not something new. It may be something you're super familiar with. You already do this stuff already. So it's a matter of, taking it to the next level.
Shay, I just was going to jump in right here if I could. So I just wanted to comment on this slide in particular. I think it's really important for boards to think about their 2% quality funds and how they can be strategic with those funds. And this becomes more and more important, of course, because as the allocations for CCDF continue to rise, your 2% quality set aside also continues to go up. So there's really, some pretty significant funding that boards have broad latitude on implementing strategies to improve childcare and early learning. And it becomes more and more important to really take the systems perspective, I think. So I just kind of wanted to call your attention to that.
Yeah, that is a great point, Allison. And also we've seen over the last 5 or 8 years in terms of the federal regulations, the Federal Office of Child Care wanting to know more and more and more about how we are spending the money, what are our goals. And of course, that since we have such a devolved local control system in Texas where we give you guys a lot of money and you guys choose how to spend it, it's going to start requiring us more and more and more to understand strategically how that is working. So this is just kind of helping us get to where we think that we're going to be going and being sure that we have data and that we're being strategic, just like Allison said, about how we're using the funds we're getting to meet the goals that we all have. Okie dokie. So 4 challenges of change. I know some of this, you may be thinking, well, I can't do that. My boss won't go for that. My board won't go for that. My providers won't go for that. Different things that come up for you. It's going to be different in every area, or we already do all of that. It's going to be, we have 28 different areas with 28 very different operating styles and all sorts of things. So it's going to be different for y'all. And it might be a challenge to start moving into a more comprehensive systems thinking effort. So here are some 4 challenges. If you have big goals, it requires change. So motivation. Why should we change? That may be something that you run into. And we're going to dive a little deeper into this in the next slides. Collaboration. Why should we work together? Why should we make an effort to get other voices around the table? Focus. With the collaboration, who should we be working with? With other boards? With childcare providers? With community members? some of whom are always knocking at our door saying, I have an idea, and maybe you are just idea'd out and you are like, well, we have things to do. Well, how can you use that passion that these community members have to help be more collaborative, and how can you kind of narrow their focus, which is the next one, to help them really support you. Focus. What should we do? What are our goals? And then learning. Why do I need to learn anything else? I already know it all. I've been doing this for 30 years. Might be something going in your head. Our system can't change. These are all big challenges that systems thinking addresses. So motivation. Systems thinking motivates people to change because they discover their own role in exacerbating the problems that they want to solve. So going back to some of the previous slides on conventional versus systems thinking, if you catch yourself or your work group going through and having some of those conventional forms of thinking, saying, wait, let's think, let's ask this question. Maybe it may feel crazy, but like, let's ask the systems thinking version of the question and just see where it gets us. It starts helping us peel back the layers of our systems and finding the kind of gaps. And that can motivate us to move differently toward solutions. Here's an example. Maybe you don't have enough providers in a rural area. We know that that's a problem. Could be not enough childcare programs, period. It could be not enough subsidy providers or TRS providers. Anyway, and thinking, who do you need to motivate to work toward solving this very, very big issue? Motivate your coworkers, your board, childcare providers who do exist, parents, employers, school districts, community partners, elected officials. Can't tell you how many times I've heard of the mayor or county official who, once they get wind of a problem, they take it up as their personal torch and want to support things. So just thinking about who are the different people that you might need to motivate to help you address this problem. What information do they have? Where is the gap? What are the resources that exist? This is just an example of how systems thinking can be used to get at motivation. And then you can get the data that you have to help inform and motivate people. Where are the childcare deserts? Where do we have Texas Rising Star providers and where do we not? You can use the data to show the impact. Look at that school district and look at their kindergarten readiness scores. And some of this pre-K partnership work we've been doing lately, it's been really surprising. It's all over the place with kindergarten readiness scores. Some communities are as low as, 30% of their kiddos are kindergarten ready. And that's something that says, give pause to anyone to say, wow, what else can we do in the system to help improve these kids before they get to kindergarten, or improve the chances of success for these kids before they get to kindergarten? Who are the eligible children not in public school pre-K? And where are they? Are they in our child care programs or are they at home? Let's figure that out as a community and message to those parents, involve those parents, work together and collaborate. And then parents who requested in the area and cannot access it. Over the last few months, I've seen a lot from parents who are wanting care during specific hours of the day or in a specific, very rural part of the state, and they don't even have anything in their county that's available, or they have to drive really far. So that's another kind of data point to say, look, we have this issue. This is what this should help us motivate these folks to help move toward a solution. Another challenge of change is collaboration. System thinking catalyzes collaboration because people can learn how they collectively create unsatisfying results that exist in their communities and that impact them personally. So an example, another just typical systems issue that we hear. In times when you have a wait list, how do you help parents who are just sitting on that wait list and you know that they need childcare because they have to go to work the next day, but you don't have the childcare subsidy available for them? Or when a parent is just, outside the income limit for subsidy and they still don't feel like they can afford childcare in their area. What do you do? What do parents need immediately? What resources are in the community? What options exist for parents? Maybe they don't qualify for subsidy because they're not working enough hours, but do they qualify for Head Start or Early Head Start or public school pre-K? Are you giving a soft handoff for them to the program? Are you telling that parent, here's where you go to find more information and apply, and here's who you can call if you have trouble?
There's a comment, excuse me. Several school districts have trouble playing in the sand with childcare. The hope is to establish more collaboration, as stated in the slides.
Yes, that is a good point. And we are working closely with the Texas Education Agency as well to figure out how we can get over this hurdle. Now, I'm not sure who exactly made that comment, but we are happy to work directly with you to help understand what the school districts are in your area and using data to help understand their motivation and goals. So here's one example of something that we've done related to that in the pre-K partnership work. We worked with local communities to say, okay, what's going on with my school district in the area? How are they doing in school readiness? And how can we support them in their school readiness goals? So we have that data for you. And we can get Texas Education Agency as well to reach out to them to see if we can do some relationship building. Sometimes it's the messenger, sometimes it's the message. So we do hear you though, for sure. It is a long-standing barrier exactly in this wheelhouse of collaboration when it comes to systems thinking. So this is something that, I hope that we can work on together, and we're here to support you if you like our support and helping build those relationships and getting to the bottom of where we might have value alignment and might be able to start a conversation across these different childcare or early childhood programs. So going back to this particular issue, understanding where the gap is, how people can build relationships, using data, and then using data to kind of show this need. Do you know what the ages are of the children on your wait list? Is there a lot of infants or toddlers? Or are there more older children or after school children? Once you kind of get to this data, it can help show you who you might need to collaborate with. What are the ages of the children? And what's the household income for the families who aren't qualifying? Do you have a way to understand who you're turning away? When they call and they get information and they give it to someone, are they collecting that information and are you analyzing who you're turning away? And is there any way to better help those parents? Because we've been talking a lot with child care regulation lately about unregulated care. And that's unfortunately where so many parents feel they have to turn to because they just don't understand that there are potentially other options, that if they call up a child care program, there are plenty that have sliding scale options for parents that you may even know of. So are you referring or at least giving them a list of saying, I know in our community, we have these providers who offer sliding scale options based on your income that may be able to work with your payment. So, there are all sorts of different ways to address the need. And then number of children who do not qualify quarterly or annually. Just another data point that may be able to help you say, okay, what can we do to these parents that we, as one part of the system, are coming into contact with and we know need help? Are we connecting them to a different system?
Just to follow up on that comment, she was saying that this is what she hears from some of her early learning programs.
Yes.
Maybe, go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, definitely. We've heard this too from parents, from programs, from local workforce boards. Some local workforce boards have asked us if they can refer children directly to Early Head Start and Head Start. And so we're working with them to figure out, of course we want to make sure that children are getting access to programs that are available in their area. And honestly, this goes beyond goes beyond a place to care for them while the parent is at work. What about special needs children? What about early childhood intervention? What if the child is 4 years old, so they're too old for early childhood intervention? What resources exist? We know the resources that exist. And do you know the resources that exist? Can we help you with that and making that connection in your community? So definitely there are issues all around when it comes to, systems thinking that we can address. The next challenge of change is focus. Systems thinking focuses people to work on a few key coordinated changes over time to achieve systems-wide impacts that are significant and sustainable. So I have 2 examples for this one. First, not enough TRS providers. Hear that all the time. Local boards have made significant progress in the last few years in improving TRS numbers. Some of y'all say, okay, great, we're going to keep making more progress. We've heard from others of y'all saying, we feel we've reached a limit, like we just can't get past where we're at right now. We are struggling. So how can we use systems thinking to narrow our focus to get at this really big issue? And this is something the state can think of too. We're all partners in this. Why aren't those programs in TRS? We have assumptions, we have anecdotes. Do we have qualitative information from widespread surveys? Do we have focus groups? What do providers need or want? What activities are we funding? And does it actually help us meet our goal? Is it working or is it not? What do others provide that I'm also providing? Who do child care providers trust? That's a big one. Who is it that they listen to? Do you need more mentors? Is that something that you are finding like we just can't meet the demand of people who are interested? But also, how long is it taking our mentors? Is it taking them more than 3 months to get someone into level 2 TRS? That's something we need to look at. What is the mentor's caseload in our area? And who can help us with this? I've seen in some communities where local boards have enlisted other community programs that aren't even they aren't their contractor and aren't the local board, but others who are very interested in early childhood help recruit for Texas Rising Star or help provide information. We've recently given Texas Rising Star brochures over to Child Care Regulation so that their regulation licensing staff has access to information to this. What more can we be doing cross-agency there? What more can folks be doing locally? I know a lot of y'all have great relationships with your licensing reps, and some may not. There's issues with turnover and consistency and all sorts of things that could be barriers to that. Have you voiced the problem solution to the right people? So really, at the heart of this, what do child care providers need to move from point A to point B? Do they need more information? What about peer learning networks? Sometimes the best messenger is another child care program. Do we need more carrots? Good policy is made up of carrots and sticks. Teacher stipends, different things like that. What are other boards doing that are related to what you're doing? And I just realized that we only have 3 minutes left. So I'm just going to fly through these. You all have access. Here's another one. Parents don't qualify for subsidy due to work requirements. You can probably review this on your own. It's pretty self-explanatory questions that you can ask yourself. Another challenge of change is learning. Systems thinking stimulates continuous learning, which is an essential characteristic of any meaningful change in a complex system. So here's an example of that. Again, not enough Texas Rising Star providers. What was the goal for the year? What did you do to achieve that goal? You know, did you measure whether it worked or not? Too often we are guilty of putting something out there and investing in something, but not thinking up front about evaluation, because evaluation doesn't come first. It comes at the end, right? Or in the middle. But if we're not making an evaluation plan at the beginning about how are we going to measure our success later, we often don't collect the right information at the beginning and throughout the program that helps us measure that success later. So looping that in to help with our learning and our understanding of our investments. What can we do better? Ask these questions to us. Ask them to child care directors, staff, parents, your coworkers, community members. This is something where we need to, we will all push ourselves in systems thinking. So I hope that this has been helpful. Here's an optional exercise that you can do on your own, is looking at the goal or issue you're trying to address, and then what are your activities, and really being explicit about how the activity supports that goal. It seems simple, but sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day, or we've always done this, or providers like it, different things like that strays us away from truly being in a systems thinking mode. With that, we don't have time for Q&A, and I'm so sorry. This went much faster than I thought it would. But if you have questions, we can answer them afterward directly with you.
Thank you so much, Shay. And you've had some comments about how much people really appreciate the introduction to systems thinking, and they think it's going to be very useful in all kinds of applications. So thank you to everyone in the audience. Thank you to all of our speakers today, Allison and Shay. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And I just wanted to remind everybody that as you leave the session with the red X, that you're going to get a survey that will pop up in your browser. And so if you would complete that as soon as you can, that would be great, and give feedback about what you'd like to see in the future. Thank you all. Y'all have a great day. I believe the next session starts at 1:30.
Thank you for attending the 2021 Texas Workforce Commission Virtual Forum. We trust the information was beneficial and will help us better serve the people of Texas. We will see you next year.